Its development agreement was approved over the course of 2 public meetings. This had to do with the legal eagle thing, where you peg something on like the air of like a living person. That's like the latest you can peg something. It's kind of like a meme shit, but yeah. Its development agreement was approved over the course of 2 public meetings held 2 weeks apart earlier this year. Both noticed in the local Orlando newspaper and attended by about a dozen residents and members of the media. No one from the governor's office was present at either meeting, according to the meeting minutes. In Wednesday's meeting, the board's special general counsel, Daniel Langley, walked through its legal arguments for nullifying the deal between Disney and the previous board member. I'm sorry, in the previous board, my bad. Oh yeah, the rule of perpetuities or whatever, which sounds incredibly fucking convoluted, but... He said the board had not provided the required public notice of its meetings and said the agreement was not properly approved by 2 municipalities within the district, the cities of Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. He also argued the previous amendments to Disney's long-term comprehensive plan were not properly vetted and approved by those 2 municipalities. The bottom line is that a development agreement has to be approved by the governing body of a jurisdiction, and that didn't happen from the cities that have jurisdiction, Langley said. Former Florida Supreme Court Justice Alan Lawson, an attorney hired by the district, said that the old board attempted to act without legal authority to act. This is essentially about what it means to live and work in a county governed by the rule of law. Everyone must play by the same rules, he said. Disney was openly and legally granted unique and special privileges. That privilege of running its own government for a time, that era has ended. If you flip a coin and its heads, I'll tier 5. Let's go, baby! Fuck you. Didn't you argue with a guy on a panel who said the government had infinite money, but just said exactly that? No. Okay, the government doesn't have infinite money. Theoretically, if the government were to print infinitely, then the value of the dollar would go to 0, right? The government can't print an infinite amount of money. However, the federal government does have a wide wiggle room on our budget because we can print money. States cannot create their own currency and borrow against themselves like that. States have to sell bonds to raise money in other ways, right? So technically, the federal government does have unlimited money, but technically it doesn't have unlimited money because if it prints unlimited money, then the value of the money goes to 0, right? For states don't have the ability to create their own currency. They have to sell bonds and shit to raise money. The end of a decades-old agreement. The state legislature created the Reedy Creek Improvement District in 1967 and effectively gave Disney the power to control municipal services like power, water, roads, and fire protection around its Central Florida theme parks that didn't exist before Walt Disney and his builders arrived. But the special district also freed Disney from bureaucratic red tape and made it cheaper to borrow to finance infrastructure projects around its theme parks, among other significant advantages. Okay. That special arrangement, though criticized at times, was largely protected by state politicians as both Disney and Florida benefited from the tourism boom. The unlikely fracturing of Florida's relationship with its most iconic business started during the contentious debate last year over state legislation to restrict certain classroom instruction on sexuality and gender identity. Disney's then CEO, Bob Chapek, facing pressure from his employees, reluctantly objected to the bill, leading DeSantis to criticize the company. When DeSantis signed the legislation into law, Disney announced it would push for its repeal. DeSantis then targeted Disney's special governing powers. For DeSantis, who has built a political brand by going toe-to-toe with businesses he identifies as woke, the latest twist threatens to undermine a central pillar of his story as he lays the groundwork for a likely presidential campaign. Destiny, I know you're off the topic, but the NSA was absolutely the leader of cryptography until the 2000s. At minimum, they added backdoors into everything, probably the ability to crack anything they'd contributed to. They probably don't have unique math, but they controlled cryptography by funding and undermining it for its own purposes. That could have been possible 20 years ago, sure. 20 or 30 years ago, sure, in the early advent of the internet. But not now while it's a multi-billion, billion dollar industry that's decentralized around the entire world, right? An entire chapter of his new autobiography is devoted to Disney, and the saga is well featured in the stump speech he has delivered around the country in recent weeks. Go find the magical backdoor. Oh, an AES or RSA or yeah, I mean there's big encryption standards. We've got big encryption standards now that I don't even think would be broken by quantum computing theoretically, right? But regardless, who cares? I feel like this is another example of something that I said earlier, where it seems like we become so politically fucking fractured in this country that we can't even take credit for the things that are like the best about us anymore. Like America can't take credit for like the vaccine because half the country thinks the vaccine is fucking poison. I feel like now and now you've got Florida, DeSantis fighting with Disney, which is inarguably a historic and internationally relevant and front and center, like propagator of American culture, like a U.S. business is, and now even Florida, where Disney World exists, is fighting with Disney. Like, how sad is that? Like, how fucked is that? Now, if you're in Florida and a Republican, how do you feel about like arguably the most important business that maybe has ever existed in your state? Like, how fucked is that? How fucking insane is that? You know? Jesus. Wait, who's told me to stop? Oh, sorry. All the shit that Disney owns. Oh yeah, the new conservative boycott. Disney owns way too much shit. It's a little crazy. All right, Benny Ben, what are you talking about over here? I think this was yesterday.
Well, folks, as you know, there's a clip of me that once went viral, all about me asking a young woman why she couldn't be 60. She was arguing, of course, that a man could be a woman. So I said, well, you're 21. Why can't you be 60? Well, now people are actually doing this. They're actually claiming that they are trans age. I do wonder sometimes whether the left hears itself. So over in Florida.
Okay, can I address this argument real quick? Okay. Let me start with this, okay? Every single person on the planet, every single person on this planet believes in trans age, okay? To start with. All of us think that trans age is real, okay? The issue that these people have is they don't actually use their brain when they're engaging with the question, and to be fair, people on the left has super muddied the water on what it means to be trans, okay? When we talk about what a trans person means, okay, hopefully, if we're still in the world of reality, okay, in the world of reality, a trans person's brain could be sexed differently than their body, right? So if that is the case, you're not just randomly identifying as something. There is a fact of the matter about the state of your brain, okay? When I talk about the trans age thing, when we talk about age is typically a signifier for other things in your life. For instance, when you hit a certain age, you have a certain amount of development. When you hit a certain age, then you're allotted a certain amount of rights when you get to the age of majority, right? So, for instance, at 18 years old, you have the right to own property, to go have sex, to go do whatever the fuck you want to do at 18 or 19 in some states. I think in Nebraska it's 19, right? However, in the United States, we recognize that some people's brains don't actually mature that way. In a way, we kind of treat people with severe mental disability as like trans-aged down to a younger age. We might treat somebody that has severe autism or crazy Down syndrome at 30 years old like they're only 6. You might actually do that. Or we might say this person is age 25, but because of a developmental disability, this person is treated essentially as a 15 or 16-year-old. Like, this already happens in the United States, where we revoke rights from people, or we assign permanent guardians to somebody because their brain hasn't matured as much as like the age they have, the age that their actual body is. So when somebody's like, oh, like trans age, it's so stupid, we kind of do treat people as different ages based on like developmental delays or other sort of problems, okay? However, you can't just say that you identify as a different age, okay? Because that doesn't make sense, right? Age is typically, if it's not going to be a signifier for like actual like physical development, age is just it's just a number. Age is a it's an actual thing that measures like how many times the Earth has gone around the sun while you exist on the planet. You can't just identify that away, right? I've been alive for 11 years. I can't identify as being alive for 30 years. It doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical. It's like identifying somebody with 4 or 5 arms. You can't do that. But for a trans person, the argument is that their brain is actually sexed differently Their brain is sexed differently than their body. So it's not just that they're identifying as trans, it's that they are trans. Now, whether or not you believe in trans people, that's fine. If you say, oh, well, I don't believe that trans people are real. I don't believe that, I don't believe any of that. Like, that's fine. If you don't believe in trans people, you think it's all fake bullshit, that's fine. But at least engage with the argument as it is. That's the argument as it is presented, all right?
A gay parade has now been canceled. Why? According to Local 10, officials in a Florida city have canceled a gay pride parade and restricted other pride events to people 21 years and older in anticipation of Governor Ron DeSantis signing a bill meant to keep children out of drag shows.
How are brains sexed differently? Could you elaborate? The argument goes that your brain has some sort of sex. Most people's brain sex aligns with their body sex. Your gender identity, your gender expression are the same. That's like most cis people. But for trans people, for whatever reason, something has happened to sex their brain differently. Where their brain is sex is female, even though their body sex is male, right? Now, whether that's actually true, whether there's other things at play, obviously is still to be researched. Like, this is all debated. Like, trans stuff is like pretty new in terms of research, everything. Nobody's got a concrete answer. But that's like in my opinion, that is the strongest argument for the existence of trans people. The self-ID stuff and all that other nonsense is just that. It's nonsense. It's garbage.
Pride Alliance of the Treasure Coast posted Wednesday on Facebook the decision to change this Saturday's Pride Fest events was made after multiple conversations.
How are brains sexed differently? Could you elaborate?
I just did. Dumbass.
Lucy officials. So why?
Except not anymore, Destiny. The mainstream talking point is that you don't need gender dysphoria to be trans. Whoever says that is a fucking retard. Ignore them. Who cares? Those are extremist trans losers that are just trying to be trans because they're trying to collect a whole bunch of fucking virtue points on Twitter. Okay? The people that do all this stuff where it's like, the people that do all this shit where they're like, oh, like anybody can be trans, you identify, blah, blah, fuck all those people. Nobody cares about those people, okay? Fuck them, okay? They're all fucking losers. It's just a bunch of white people on Twitter that need some sort of oppression in their life to feel like they have an opinion that matters, okay?
Well, apparently, the DeSantis administration was cracking down on lewd displays before children. They basically said no assless chaps or displays of dildos, and in front of the kids. And the gay pride parade, instead of being like, okay, we'll fly our rainbow flags and we will celebrate gay marriage, they're like, nope, we're going to pull the parade. Do you hear yourselves, guys? I mean, I'm fine with it. That's what you want to do. But it seems like you're kind of like, is that if the purpose of the gay pride parade is the assless chaps and the simulated sex act in front of kids, and so you have to cancel it to the extent that like a law that says you can't sexually indoctrinate kids affects the parade? What does that say about your parade, really? I mean, meanwhile, other things that I like. The trans movement obviously is going to have some radical ramifications for a lot of other things in American life. One of those things.
The war is this law is probably phrased in such a way that it's going to be like, it has a nihilist overreach. It's going to be my guess, but I haven't seen that particular law in Florida, but.
Obviously, is going to be the question of age. So you'll recall that a few years back, a very, very famous exchange, me and a college student, in which this college student took the position that men can be women, women can be men. And I asked this college student her age. And she told me her age. She said she was 20 or something, 21. And I said, why aren't you 60? And this, of course, went viral because I was saying, like, you can't change your age and you can't change your sex. So what are you talking about here? Let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are, okay? Because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So
I'm 22, so I'm probably only naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60?
Did you not say time is perceived faster or slower for people in their head, which is why they feel like they're older/younger?
But we usually have a term for that, maturity. Like, age is pretty tied in, right? You can't identify as 4 feet tall or 9 feet tall. You can't identify as having 7 legs. You can't identify as being a different, like, years you've existed on the planet, right? How does Ben not realize how embarrassing it is to bring up a dunk on a fucking college kid? I mean, that's how he made his early shit, right? Destiny, the corollary of your trans age argument is that trans must then be a disease to be accepted. You can call it a disease if you want. You can call it whatever. People typically don't because it's I mean, it's an abnormality, of course. People don't because that's like a normatively loaded word. But I think you're trying to normatively load it, so you're not trying to trap me because you're interested in like an actual like intellectual grasp of the topic. You're just trying to get me to like admit that it's a disease. But like, sure, like let's say that I grant you that. Okay, sure, being trans is a disease. That makes you even more fucking retarded for saying people shouldn't be allowed medication to treat it, right? Like if you try to push that hard as a conservative to get somebody to say like, oh, then isn't being trans an illness? Like, yeah, it is true. It's an illness that's treated by atropine surgery. Like, okay. Or are you telling me now you do want to recognize it as an illness, but you don't want to do anything about it, which is even more retarded. It's the most retarded position, right?
60.
Is it?
And why can't you?
Ben Shapiro is a better man than me. There is no shot I would be able to watch videos of myself dunking on like randos from 8 years ago and not cringe into another fucking universe. Oh, I recognize this. I feel like I've watched this video before. I probably watched this video 6 years ago.
Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are, okay? Because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably like
I'm
90,
trans
right?
age. Totally explains why I'm racist and sexist. I'm a 80-year-old man in a 20-year-old's body. Justified finally.
Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably like naive, right?
No, why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Is it?
She hasn't, because the problem is she doesn't have a fully developed thing. Like, why aren't you 60? Well, because there's an underlying fact of the matter for my age, right? But there's also an underlying fact of the matter of the sex of the brain. That should be the argument, right? Like you said, this is a super viral video, yeah.
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
It's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender.
Is it
Well,
though?
now I guess we've hit.
Is age significantly less important than gender?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Like, if you could know one thing about a person, who did you fuck yesterday, and you want to know if it's right or wrong, would it be more important to know the age or the gender? I feel like that's not the case that in all ages, or I'm sorry, in all cases, gender is more important than age. It probably depends a lot based on what we're talking about, right? Like, but I mean, like, I'm being a little obtuse now, but like, it's kind of silly to compare the two. Like, what's more important, your age or your gender? I don't know, that's kind of silly.
Hit the end of parody because now we have 60-year-old men identifying as 6-year-old.
Wait, someone in chat just said from a medical perspective. Even from a medical perspective, like, this person's kidneys are failing. Would you rather know their age or their gender? What, that doesn't, like, if they're 2 years old, that's a really big deal. If they're like 112 and they're like on their last legs, right? I don't know. It's just, it's a silly comparison, I think.
Girls. This is a clip that was going viral on the Twitters of a 60-year-old man in Great Britain claiming that he is in fact a 6-year-old girl. Now, what's hilarious about this, and the reason why I put it in things I like rather than things I hate, is I think it does quite well expose the trans agenda. If this were a man claiming that he is in day 365 of girlhood, he would be getting all sorts of ad deals from Maybelline and Tampax and Bud Light. But since he claims that he's a 60-year-old man who's a 6-year-old girl, it's the age that really is upsetting people. It's the age that's troubling, not the fact that this is a dude claiming that he is a female.
Today is my first day of having my living room as my playroom. And my Kodo is here with me, but I didn't have any friends over for the play date because it's COVID time. But
is anybody defending this, or is this just everybody just see this guy as like mentally ill? Like,
I'm having fun with Makoto, my cat, and with Franny. She's my baby. Anyways, I just wanted you to see I made a tutu with my sewing machine.
My God.
Oh no.
And it's
Oh my God.
it's for pretending to be a little fairy.
Oh no. Oh no. But here's the thing. Why not? Question to the left. Why not? Why can't this 60-year-old man be a 6-year-old girl? Why not? You say he's a man who can be a girl. Again, day 365 of girlhood means that you're getting calls from the President of the United States. So when is the Prime Minister of Britain, not Rishi Sunak, who actually has his head screwed on straight on this, yeah, maybe some of the former prime ministers, well, why don't they call up this guy and congratulate a girl? I mean, the good news is that, according to the left, this means that he is basically immortal because he can just keep identifying as a younger and younger person. He'll never die. That's very exciting. None of this ideology makes sense because it is all pagan crap and it has nothing to do with reality. Okay, time for some things that I hate.
Why
All right,
are you
so-
overruling? This is the society you want. Totally normal.
I'm sorry, hold on. Fuck, I'm saying this out loud because I'm never gonna do this, but this is such a good idea. Imagine doing a show. It would be so much fun to do a show like Fresh and Fit, but instead you just bring on guys instead of girls. You bring on like frat boys. Oh my god. There would be like an infinite number of ideas you could spin off in terms of like shit you could do on this. It would be so fucking funny. Like when you go around the table, instead of asking like what's your body count and your relationship status, like imagine you go around and you ask like what's your height and your IQ for every single guy at the table. And then sometimes on episodes like Fresh and Fit, Myron would bring out like a scale to like weigh girls. Imagine a guy's like 6 foot, and then you bring out like in the middle of the episodes like we're gonna measure your height for all of you. And then it would be so much fun to go. You know how Sneeko says shit like oh, name 3 countries. It would be so funny to go around a table of frat boys and be like, I want you to calculate in your head with no calculator what is 17.5% of 100, right? And like see how many of them can actually get it right as you go around the table. Or like you're traveling 80 miles. Or wait, what's the one question that fucks everybody up? How long does it take you to travel 60 miles if you're going 60 miles an hour? Is that the one? Like, it would be so fucking hilarious to do this with a bunch of fucking frat boys. Destiny, wait, what? That's hard for everyone? Oh, wait, what? Did I just get my first contestant? Oh no. Oh no.
You're going 70 miles per hour. How long would it take you to drive 70 miles?
70, nigga?
Oh, why? Why 70? Explain to the camera why.
Because 1 times 70, 70.
Well, who the fuck said anything about 1? Where did 1 come from? You're going 70 miles per hour.
Oh, 1 hour.
You're going.
I feel like there's a video in a car where somebody does this for a long time. Oh my god, hold on. I'm sorry, I just have so many good ideas. Imagine you have like a soundboard where you push the buttons like Myron has, but all of the buttons are like quips from things like the women on The View say. Fuck, that would be so fucking good. God damn. Okay, sorry.
There is a human named Jules Hoffman. Jules Hoffman is a woman, but Jules Hoffman says that she is a they. According to Jules, the reason this is of relevance is because Jules Hoffman is one of the stars of a wildly popular YouTube channel for babies and toddlers called Songs for Littles. The host of this is apparently a person named Miss Rachel. Now, I've never watched this, nor would I expose my children to a woman who says that she is a they, not 3-year-old children. Nope. But this is, what is it? So Miss Rachel used to be just a place where you would hear a cute songs sung to your 3-year-old. Now it's...
Wait, fuck. Oh, dude, August's gonna hate me so much because he wanted me to watch this video. Now I'm getting hardcore distracted. I'm so sorry.
All right, we're traveling from Logan to Boise, and I just proposed a math question to my beautiful wife, Chelsea. And the question, very difficult to calculate, is if you are traveling 80 miles per hour, how long does it take you to go 80 miles? Okay, what do you think, Chell? Let's go through the process. What do you think?
Well, if I run the mile in about 9 minutes.
Wait, what about the tire turning thing you were talking about? You think that affects it?
Well, I'm just guesstimating probably about, it turns about 400 times in a mile.
That's just calculate, like guessing calculations?
Yeah, I don't know how you would work that out.
It'd be tough.
Yeah, so I don't know, because if I run a mile in like 9 minutes, then I mean, but that's when I'm out of shape. When I'm really in shape at like 7 minutes is when I'm like really in shape, and that takes me a mile, and we're going 80 miles. I'm running in about probably 10 miles per hour, if that.
Yeah.
What the fuck is you talking about? Jesus Christ, you poor girl.
But, I mean, it's gotta take at least like 58 minutes or something.
58 minutes? It's pretty close.
To go 80 miles.
Do you want to know what the answer is?
What?
The weird thing is, what algorithm is she using in her head where she actually calculates it to be fairly close? Or is she just pulling that number out of her ass and she just happens to be closer than she ever really deserves to be for that calculation?
Think about 80 miles per hour.
Yeah.
So how long does it take me to go 80 miles if I'm traveling 80
You're
miles
driving
per
fast. You are driving faster than a minute a mile.
Yeah, totally.
So
A minute
I would whack 80
mile
in half, and that's 40. Because I mean, you're probably going 2 minutes a mile.
Just whack it in half.
Well, depends on it. I mean, some cars' tires turn faster than others.
Yeah.
No, what
definitely
the fuck is he saying?
Because I mean, I think a truck probably is slower because it weighs more. But I think it also matters if your car's a stick or automatic.
Okay, Chal.
What?
Think about the term miles per hour.
MPH.
MPH. So if I say I'm driving 80 miles per hour, that means I'm going to go 80 miles in an hour.
No, you are not, because you are driving faster than a mile a minute.
No.
I can run 1 mile in 7 minutes, and that's a 10. Okay? So I mean, that's booking it too.
Okay, so if I'm going 60 miles per hour,
Then it'll take about 30 minutes. I would just cut it right in half.
What I'm trying to explain the answer, but
Well, you are not making sense because I make sense. You do not make sense. My car's tires may be they're kind of a little flat, so they may not move as fast as like a police officer's tires that are full. But
okay, Chell, the answer.
My tires are turning maybe I'd say about 400 times per mile.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you the answer. You ready for the
No, they
answer?
gotta be like 1,000.
You ready for the answer? The answer to.
You don't know the answer.
I do know the
You
answer.
can guesstimate just like I guesstimate.
I'm not guesstimating. I'm using math and science. I'm using my own. I'm using my own term. Okay, Chell. The answer to the question, how far? No. How?
Oh no, he got confused.
How long does it take me to travel 80 miles if I'm driving 80 miles per hour? The answer is 1 hour. Your guess was close.
So say you drive 60 miles per hour at 60 miles. You want to go 60 miles at 60 miles per hour. Is that an hour?
Yep.
What about 40 miles at 40 miles per hour?
Then you will go 40 miles in 1 hour.
You cut that in half. You're going more than a mile a minute. Okay, let's time.
I don't even think
Right
she's
now.
getting the speed concept of it.
Uh-oh. Oh, can you stop filming? Uh-oh. Oh no, a multi-hit clip. Bro. Nobody needed to hear that. Chill.
Use several objects. Okay, select all points of the dinosaur tail. Alright.
Sorry. What's up, Benny Boy?
A place where you can learn about why gender is non-binary.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everyone. We're gonna have so much fun. I'm so glad you came today. Are you ready to sing? Are you ready to play? Hooray! It's time for songs for littles. Songs for littles. It's time for songs for littles.
Okay, so this is a lady singing. Okay, right? I mean, unless that is a man with a very high voice, which is not. That is a lady singing.
Okay.
So what are the
what-
pronouns?
I don't know what the
So
fuck happened.
Hoffman uses they, them pronouns. And that's, I'm sure, very exciting for your tiny child who doesn't understand what the hell is going on. And yes, distinctions matter to small children and to everyone else in life. But now we have an entire piece in the Washington Post saying that you must expose your child to this or you're a bad parent. Quote, Hoffman is one of the stars of Songs for Littles. Using their niece and nephews, which they refer to as nibblings, as inspiration, Hoffman belts out tunes on pizza.
Nibblings? Is that what they said? Nibblings?
Said dinosaurs and the hokey pokey. The channel's most popular video has been viewed more than 290 million times. But the channel has come under fire recently after some parents took issue with Hoffman's identity, asserting falsely the show introduced the concept of they, them pronouns to their young audience. A video on TikTok criticizing the show has been...
When I see my kid walk through the door, I'm like, what up, my nibbler? Every time.
Viewed more than 400
You know they made that name just because they wanted to say that, guaranteed.
Times.
These are people that rap to the songs with their windows rolled all the way up when they're driving through traffic. 100%.
Hoffman said the backlash was a surprise and sent them on a roller coaster of emotion as they waded through hundreds of TikToks and commenters, some critical and others supportive. Apparently, the show's star, Rachel Griffin-Accurso, educator and songwriter, announced she was taking a break from social media to address her own mental health after the fallout. Hurtful videos and comments, no matter how much attention they get, will not bring you what you want. Only love can do that.
Aww.
Oh, how radically exciting. Again, how about this? You should be screening pretty much everything your kid watches. The fact that there are people who wish to present themselves to your child in a guise that is deliberately confusing to your child, the fact that that exists means that you just have to police it harder. And parents who refuse to police this material for their kids should not be surprised when their kids become very confused about these things because they are inherently confusing, because they do not make sense, because they are not true. It turns out that Jules Hoffman is a woman, not a they, them. It's just amazing, amazing stuff. So we'll get to that momentarily. First, it's time to talk to you about Daily Wire's most trusted privacy partner and premier sponsor of my show, ExpressVPN. Are you aware your browsing data is constantly being tracked and monitored?
I didn't
Have you
know
ever
that.
stopped to think about who has access to that information and what they might actually do with it? Well, if you're like most people, you probably haven't thought about that a whole hell of a lot, but the truth is your browsing data can reveal a lot about you, your interests, your habits, your location, even your identity. Every time you visit a website, click on a link, or make a purchase online, you're leaving a digital trail that can be monetized by advertisers and
That
data
happens
brokers.
on DGG.
They use that information to target you with ads and promotions that are tailored specifically to you. The more data they have, the more
I collect
accurately
all
they can
your
target
data.
you. Plus, again, big tech would love your info, so would big government, so would hackers. They all want that stuff. That's why I use ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN encrypts my internet traffic, hides my browsing data from prying eyes. This makes it way more difficult for anybody to intercept my data or track my activity online. I love ExpressVPN. It's super easy to use. One button to click to download it. You click again. It is now activated. Lightning fast speeds, unlimited bandwidth, easy to use software. ExpressVPN is the perfect choice for anyone looking to protect their online privacy and security. Secure online activity today. Visit expressvpn.com/Ben. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. You can get an extra 3 months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Ben. It's very important that you have life insurance. It's just an important thing for you to do. God forbid something should happen to you. You got to make sure that your family is taken care of. This is why you need to head on over to Policy Genius right now. I have lots of life insurance on me. My business partners have life insurance. My wife has life insurance. It's the
What is that? I have lots of life insurance. What are you trying to say? Like, don't kill me.
responsible thing to do. Policy Genius can make it happen for you quickly and easily without spending a ton of money. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies starting at just $25 per month for $1 million in coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid those unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius's licensed agents work for you, not the insurance companies, which means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can actually trust their guidance. No added fees. Your personal information remains private. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net. You deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. Head over to policygenius.com/Shapiro. Click the link in the description. Get your free life insurance quotes. See how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Shapiro. Again, policygenius.com/Shapiro. They'll make sure that you get the life insurance you need at a price you can afford. Policygenius.com/Shapiro. Make sure that you competitively shop. One of the most important things you can have, life insurance through Policy
what was the link?
Genius. And so, what the poll show is that Joe Biden is wildly unpopular. Like very, very, very unpopular. However, the Republican nominee Only 60% of Americans think Trump should not run for president.
Did you
Only
celebrate
35%
the 25th of April? They did the most based revolution ever. If you didn't, you got fucked.
That Donald Trump should run for president of the United States. Not only that, the leading feelings that people have with regards to the possibility of a Trump-Biden rematch is exhaustion, which, frankly, I can't imagine why. I can't imagine why. There's a survey, again, from Yahoo News at YouGov, and it found that 38% of Americans chose exhaustion after being shown a list of 8 feelings and asked to select all that comes to mind when considering another Biden versus Trump campaign.
True.
And among registered voters, that number is even higher, 44%. The other numbers? Fear, 29%, sadness, 23%, hope, 23%, anger, 23%, excitement, 16%, pride, 8%, or gratitude, 7%. Yes, Americans are very positive about another Trump-Biden matchup. It's what the people want. They demand it. And this is one of the big problems that you have with the weakening of parties, counterintuitively. The weakening of both the Republican and the Democratic parties means that basically the bases of both parties and the more involved bases of both parties tend to have outsized influence compared to the rest of the American population, which means very often that candidates who are not wildly popular with the American public end up being the nominees of their parties. Trump, for what it's worth, is currently wrapping up a bunch of congressional endorsements. Now, you would imagine, listen, he's the former president of the United States. He's the Republican frontrunner. He should be. He's also the only major candidate to have announced thus far. You have Nikki Haley, who's announced, and you have Vivek Ramaswamy, who's announced. DeSantis is not yet announced. But Trump is racking up endorsements, particularly in Florida. Again, not a major shock, also because if you are a state or congressional politician, what you don't want is Trump attacking you. If Trump asks you for an endorsement, the safest thing to do is give it to him, because if you don't endorse DeSantis, DeSantis isn't going to attack you, but Trump will if you don't.
True.
So here's Fox News covering that.
I'll be asking everybody to support President Trump, and Ron DeSantis hasn't declared he's running for president yet. I think he's a great governor of Florida. So if I were Florida, I would give DeSantis a 3rd term and everybody get behind President Trump.
You can't.
With us now, Congressman Carlos Jimenez, who was kind enough to take time.
Wait, he just said you can't. Our governor's term limited? I have no idea. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Oh wait. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Depends on the state? Gotcha.
Time to let us know where he's going and where he's heading and who he's supporting. Congressman, who is it?
Well, I'm announcing that I'll be supporting President Donald J. Trump for president in 2024. I think he gives us the best chance of winning.
Nope.
He had a solid track record as president, and yesterday at the dinner, he laid out a solid plan for the future and where we need to go.
Okay, so this idea that Trump gives Republicans the best chance of winning is belied by pretty much all of the polls at this point, as well as the fact that he already ran an election campaign against Joe Biden, and it didn't go amazing. He's not the president of the United States right now. Trump's team is focused in on Ron DeSantis like a laser beam. According to Rolling Stone, a Trump advisor says, quote, Team Trump does not just want to beat him. Team Trump wants to humiliate him, maybe more than they've ever wanted to humiliate anybody on the national stage. That is what is driving a lot of this. Now, the problem for Trump is that the angle that he's taking with regard to DeSantis is one that does not make the base particularly enthusiastic. He is currently attacking DeSantis with alacrity from the left, almost entirely from the left, because it's impossible to get to DeSantis' right. So instead, he's attacking him from the left. So over the weekend, Trump did a speech in which he ripped on DeSantis repeatedly. The important thing here is really not the attacks. The important thing is the crowd reaction. Listen to how quiet it is.
Uh-oh.
Except you don't see that tabulation. We did much better in 2020 in Florida. I got 1.2 million more votes than your successful governor's campaign. You know that. We got 1.2 million. Sir, I'd love to have your support, sir. I'd love to have your support. I'm down at about 3. I'd love to have your support. All right, let's think about it. And it was like a rocket ship after I gave it. Otherwise, right now, you'd have a lawyer someplace looking for business.
Okay, and
well, wait, I feel like there was applause there. No, I mean maybe not a ton, but there was some.
See how objects move across a certain interval. To see object's trajectory, select the object and an interval on the timeline.
On the timeline.
Select other objects with the left mouse button to see their trajectories. By default, if you select a group of objects, you only see the trajectory of the object that has the highest position in the object hierarchy. To view trajectories of other objects in the group, select them the usual way. Note that the group as a whole will not be deselected.
It's called CASCADEUR.
Trajectory tool can also work with groups of objects in several other modes. Switch these modes on the tab next to the tool button. The first one shows trajectories of selected objects. The next mode shows positions of the edges that connect selected point controllers. The last mode shows both point controllers and edges between them. You can also use that the group as a select other objects with the left mouse button to see their trajectories. By default, if you select a group of objects, you'll only see the trajectory of the object that has the highest position in the object hierarchy. To view trajectories of other objects in the group, select them the usual way. Note that the group as a whole will not be deselected.
Deselected.
Trajectory tool can also work with groups of objects in several other modes. Switch these modes on the tab next to the tool button. The first one shows trajectories of selected objects. The next mode shows positions of the edges that connect selected point controllers.
Oh, shit. No, what?
The first one shows trajectories of selected objects. The next mode shows positions of the edges that connect selected point controllers. The last mode shows both point controllers and edges between them. You can also use the switch to show only the keyframes on the trajectories. Lock trajectories to show only the keyframes. You can also use the switch to show only the keyframes on the trajectories. Lock trajectories of the selected objects, so they will be visible even when objects are not selected. Locked object trajectories can be shown in several different modes as well. Press the Set Trajectory Interval button to lock trajectories for the selected interval of frames. Now trajectories for this interval will be visible even when you select other frames. Trajectory interval is marked with black flags on the timeline. Finally, you can edit trajectories by using standard manipulators on trajectory points. You can edit trajectory interval is marked with black flags on the timeline. Interval of frames. Press the Set Trajectory. Locked object trajectories can be shown in several different modes as well. Press the Set Trajectory Interval button to lock trajectories for the selected interval of frames.
Oh god.
Now trajectories for this interval will be visible even when you select other frames.
Bro, I see I lost
even when you Now trajectories for this interval will be visible even when you select other frames.
Yeah, okay, got it.
Trajectory interval is marked with black flags on the timeline.
Got it.
Finally, you can edit trajectories by using standard manipulators on trajectory points.
Money go what? Money go what? How do you do that? Wait, what?
Trajectories by using standard manipulators on trajectory points.
Got it. Got it. Got it. I got it. Man. D.
We can get through as many questions as possible. With that, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's a true treat to have you. We'll let you get the ball rolling, Mike, with your opening statement.
Thank you, James. Thank you to Modern Day Debate for hosting. So this is a debate I never thought I'd have to have because I assumed that as a species we realized the practice of child marriage was an abomination at this point. But apparently Muslims, like Daniel, think this is a practice he can defend as a moral good. The reason this debate came about was because Daniel publicly challenged me on the topic, which is fine. I've publicly challenged people, but when I've done so, I've reached out to them privately to set it up. This did not happen, which left me confused as if this debate was going to happen. But I contacted James to make sure we certainly got to this point. So here are my goals. I will argue the practice of child marriage is not morally permissible because of the harm it causes. It leads to physical abuse, bodily harm, psychiatric problems, and a high risk of death. So if you agree with Daniel, Chris Hansen would like for you to take a seat. Take a seat right over there as we dive in. Now, the United Nations defines a child as anyone below the age of 18. I suspect Daniel will disagree with this because it's not the age of adulthood historically. So for the sake of clarity, I will define a female child as anyone who has not completed puberty. The CDC says puberty is complete in girls between 15 and 17, so it makes sense the following stage, age 18, is when we grant the status of adulthood. And so I will argue no one should really marry under 18 and no girl should be subjected to motherhood until she has decided to have a child and has matured enough. Obviously, there is some variation when that occurs. Therefore, I will argue consummating marriage with a girl who has not completed puberty and forcing her to bear children is immoral. Now, Daniel disagrees with the science that supports this assessment and said in his debate with Destiny, in Islam you can consummate the marriage at puberty. Then in his post-debate review he said, what is so fundamentally wrong about consummating marriage at puberty? This is a question that none of these liberals can answer. All liberals can cite is like these abstract claims about what is psychologically beneficial or harmful. But this has not been established. This has not been established scientifically. It's all just what's culturally acceptable in the post-industrial superpowers. Well, that's what I'm going to answer tonight, and I'll explain why it is immoral. Because once again, child marriages lead to physical abuse, bodily harm to girls, psychiatric problems, and despite what Daniel has said, this has been demonstrated scientifically. So the first thing to note is puberty is not a boundary point that girls cross over. It's a process. It takes time for a girl's hips to widen and for her to develop into a woman. This is nowhere near complete when a girl has her first period. To treat womanhood as a boundary point for girls and not as a process is an unscientific way to understand puberty. There is no reason to assume a girl becomes a woman the moment she shows any sign of puberty, let alone she be ready for marriage and childbearing. Yet this is the Islamic teaching on the issue, which Daniel has stated. Well, this study, that is marriage under 18, found that child marriage was significantly associated with delayed antenatal care, miscarriages, preterm delivery, low birth weight, health problems in newborn babies, faulty feeding practices, lack of knowledge regarding family welfare methods, and health implications. They note child marriages lead to serious health consequences. It also bereaves young girls of their childhood by overburdening them with domestic responsibility, motherhood, and sexual relations, rather than allowing them to play with friends or go to school. The study continues and says that child mothers are physiologically and psychologically not prepared for childbirth. Maternal morbidity and mortality is also noted to be high in such young mothers. The girls lack the maturity and the education to properly nurture their own children, and then they make mistakes that hinder their own children's mental and social development, because the girls have had their own mental and social development hindered by being forced to marry so young. So they then hinder the development of their own children. So arguing for girls to be forced into these situations is blatantly immoral. In 2007, the United Nations Children Fund reported that a girl under 15 is 5 times more likely to die during pregnancy and childbirth than a woman in her 20s. Another paper pointed out that girls under 18 are more likely to die from childbirth and debilitating illnesses like obstetric fistulas. In Mali, the maternal mortality rate for girls 15 to 19 is 178 per 100,000 of live births. And that is not just because of poor health care, because in the same country, the maternal mortality rate for girls, for women that is only 32 per 100,000. In Togo, for the same groups, the rates are 286 and 39. And the reason for these high numbers is because they're more likely to suffer from eclampsia, postpartum hemorrhage, and obstructed labor.
Damn.
Obstructed labor often leads to obstetric fistulas. That is where holes develop in the birth canal and can lead to leakage of urine, feces, blood, can cause nerve damage, the significant decrease in the likelihood of conceiving a second healthy child, as well as the death of the girl. The paper says girls 10 to 15 are especially vulnerable because their pelvic bones are not ready for childbearing and delivery. Their risk of a fistula is as high as 88%. Additionally, mortality rates are 73% higher for infants born to mothers than are children. Even the mortality rate for children under 5 born to child mothers can be 28% higher than those born to mothers over 20. Because
God damn it.
a 2022 study found that girls who marry under 18 were more likely to be physically, emotionally, and sexually abused by their husbands in 14 of the 16 countries they looked at, with strong correlations in 6. Additionally, they note pregnancy-related complications are the leading cause of death among adolescent girls in these regions. A review of the literature found that multiple studies have found the same result. They say the reason is because there is an extreme uneven power dynamic between the male and the female, mainly because of the age gap. The females, who lack decision-making abilities, constantly deal with harassment from their husbands and in-laws and are socially isolated. The review agrees with other research I cited that child mothers are likely to suffer from pregnancy-related complications.
Wait. Why is this guy so fucking bent on seeing how other niggas look, bro? Jesus. It's kind of such a pussy move. Okay. Okay. No more
18.5. So most countries where data is available actually understand it's better for a woman to wait for a girl to become a woman before she's expected to have children. If Daniel was correct, it's beneficial for a society to force girls to have children. Why is it not practiced more? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. It's because most people understand it comes with all sorts of problems that actually harm your overall society. Daniel has also appealed to the past and has argued child marriages were perfectly normal before these Western Christians came along and ruined all the fun they were having with children. Well, first off, on behalf of Western Christians everywhere, you're welcome. But second, although child marriages have occurred in the past in many cultures, it still does not make them morally permissible. And third, studies on the Roman Empire indicate the average age women were married was still in their late teens to early 20s.
Damn.
Like today, many in the past understood forcing a girl to bear children led to serious complications. For the Jews of the same time period, it would vary from region to region, with the Jews in Babylon marrying younger. But the scholar Michael Satlow has pointed out the average age Jewish women would marry was still in their mid-teens to early 20s and after they had matured. Some texts even speak of a woman being ripe for marriage at 20. So if Daniel wants to argue that Mary, the mother of God, was a child bride, I will contest that. Even medical experts before the modern era spoke out against marrying too young. In the 2nd century, Cyrannus of Ephesus warned problems result if girls are married too young, in childbirth, that is. Kim Phillips, in her book, points out that Albertus Magnus advised waiting until after puberty before attempting to conceive children. Giles of Rome even said it's best for girls to wait until 18 before consummating marriage, long before the rise of liberalism.
Oh wait, is this actually Gideon? Why are you spamming my channel, motherfucker?
Phillips also notes there was no single marker that indicated the transition into adulthood. It was understood as a process. She says canon legal theory on women's marriageable age offers a very limited perspective, and that social beliefs and practices provide a more reliable view of girls' transition to adulthood. Now again, these books and papers do accept that girls were married at younger ages at times. But if we follow what the current science shows us, it makes sense that many past cultures had such high infant mortality rates if girls in those societies were having children at younger ages. Of course, Daniel doesn't need to defend marriage at 15 or 14, but consummating marriage with a 9-year-old. Because that is what Daniel accepts his prophet did when he consummated his marriage to his child bride, Aisha.
Uh-oh.
And there's no reason to think this act set a good example for the rest of us. Now, before closing, I suspect we might see some whataboutism from Daniel, where he might try to argue there are child brides in the Bible. The problem is this would be confusing descriptions with permissions. The Bible describes things that happened in the past without claiming they were good actions. God often tolerated the sin of the prophets and the patriarchs and proclaimed their actions were morally good. I suspect he'll go to Numbers 31, where Moses tells Israel to kill all the Midianites, but keep the young girls for themselves. And I suspect Daniel will argue God was permitting Israelites to take virgin child brides. But scholars like Robert Alter and Paul Copen note this was not a command from God. The text says this is Moses acting on his own out of anger. In the chapter, God only commands Israel to make war on Midian. And after that, Moses becomes angry and tells Israel to go one step further without God's involvement. Moreover, in doing this, Moses violates the principles of Deuteronomy 20, which says to not kill the livestock, women, and children in war. So Moses' anger caused him to order something that God directly argued against in Deuteronomy. And as we find out later, Moses' anger eventually got the best of him.
Loser.
Furthermore, Christians are under the ethics of the New Covenant, not the Old. There's nothing in the virtue ethics of the New Testament that would remotely suggest child marriages are morally permissible. Paul and Jesus taught the way we fulfill the law of God is by loving one another. And obviously, instituting child marriages are one of the most unloving things we could do. Christianity lays down a normative system of virtue ethics. And virtue ethics requires we study circumstances and natural facts to know how to properly love others. So given the science, Christianity is vehemently opposed to the practice of child marriage. And I can assure you that we Christians of the West will do everything in our power to end this obvious human rights problem promoted by people like Daniel.
Oof.
So I will press Daniel on this. He has to answer me on the studies I cited. Daniel, how can you claim child marriages should be practiced given the extensive harm they cause? If you argue in favor of child marriages, then I will doubt that you care about the well-being of girls. Also, you're required to give moral justification for child marriage, not just ways that might be pragmatic for maximizing fertility. If Daniel does not, his position is indefensible, and we will trust the medical experts around the world that child marriages should be abolished worldwide. Daniel is arguing against the consensus of medical experts everywhere, so the burden of proof is on him. The lives and the health of young girls everywhere are at stake. Let's see what he has to say.
All right, thank you very much for that opening, Mike. We will kick it over to Daniel for his opening statement as well. Daniel, the floor is all yours.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Just a quick disclaimer that we are debating religious doctrine, history, and ethics. Nowhere am I advocating people break the law. I strongly advise everyone to follow your local laws. Many are appalled that we're even having this debate, and those people probably have a hard time imagining how anyone could ever think that marriage to a minor is acceptable. But the reality is all people historically considered minor marriage perfectly normal. If you give me a chance, I'll explain why.
Oh no.
The first step is to acknowledge some basic biological facts. Puberty doesn't happen overnight or at one specific age. Rather, puberty is an extended process lasting from 2 to 5 years. The start of puberty also varies. It usually begins between 8 to 13 in girls or 9 to 15 in boys. Many factors affect puberty, including race and environment. For example, black girls reach puberty a year earlier than white girls. Puberty also accelerates in stressful environments, like food shortages or absent fathers. But even in normal environments, 1% of girls have their periods by age 8 and 4% have them by age 9. This means that they have completed puberty by ages 8 or 9.
That's not how puberty works, lil bro.
Overall, children complete puberty in the 8 to 15 age range and start experiencing...
In the 8 to 15 age range? Lil bro, what are you saying? Oh, can we get the FBI to check this dude's shit? Where's Corantos? Oh no.
Sexual desires. Now here's the million-dollar question. How do children deal with those desires? I want all the opponents of child marriage to give us a practical solution for all these sexually frustrated minors out there. Because those hormones hit like a tsunami, creating desires that need an outlet. The outlet promoted in society today is an absolute disaster. Kids are taught sex ed as early as 9, and some experts want sex ed in kindergarten. You're barely done with primary school and your teachers are passing out condoms and telling you to get birth control. Between 40 to 55% of high schoolers have had full sexual intercourse. If you include oral sex, the percentages are a lot higher. Many children as young as 9 or 10 engage in these sexual behaviors. Experts say we have an epidemic of sexting, for example, among minors, with 25% of teens texting each other naked pictures of themselves. Educators have responded by teaching children to practice safe sexting. Send naked pictures of yourself to other kids safely. Also included in sex ed is pornography education, because the average age a child sees hardcore porn is 10. It's just become an accepted fact that children watch porn, so let's just teach them how to do it safely. The shocking news recently is that they've started to teach kindergartners how to masturbate. Meanwhile, there's an epidemic of porn addiction that's destroying the mental health and well-being of generations of youth. These are today's socially acceptable outlets for childhood sexuality. Hopefully, all Muslims and Christians here agree that fornication, masturbation, and pornography are not acceptable solutions. Rather, these practices destroy the moral fabric of society and corrupt the soul. But the problem actually goes much deeper. Sadly, much of the sexual activity for minors involves sexual abuse. According to the data, 28% of American children ages 14 to 17 have suffered sexual abuse. Some of this happens in churches, but the majority happens in public schools. According to reports, the sexual abuse of students in schools is more than 100 times the abuse in churches. Researchers conclude that by 11th grade, 10% of children have been sexually abused in school. That means that in America alone, 4.5 million children are victims. And none of this includes other forms of sexualizing children, like drag queen story hour, the rise of pornographic educational material in school libraries, the sexualization of children's clothes, beauty pageants, and on and on. The point is, childhood sexual desire from puberty is an unstoppable biological force. How does one channel those desires is the question, and Western society channels it through fornication, masturbation, and porn. In the best case, and in the worst case, the sexualization and fetishization of children as young as 4. But for the vast majority of history, people of all religions and cultures had another solution, and that solution is marriage. Marriage is the healthy, wholesome outlet for the natural sexual desire that humans start experiencing at puberty. And pre-industrial religious and cultural traditions hold that marriage should be available at puberty. They don't stipulate an exact age for sex or marriage because, again, puberty is highly variable in terms of when it begins. So all religions and cultures have had this solution of marriage, but what changed? Why is minor marriage now seen as this unspeakable crime? To answer this question, let's look at the history of child marriage in the West. According to ancient Jewish norms, a man can marry and have sex with a girl as young as 3. This ruling is found in the Talmud and is based on the precedent set by the Jewish prophet Isaac, who married Rebekah when she was 3 and he was 40, as inferred from biblical passages like Genesis chapter 23 and Genesis chapter 25, verse 20. In Numbers 31, Moses commands his armies to slaughter the enemy, including all...
Oh, Jesus. Daniel is given the exact passages that this guy's already countered. I don't know if you guys are noticing or not.
all adults and male children. However, female virgin children were spared for sex, although some have argued they had to be forcefully married. Whether Old or New Testament, there are many discussions of marriage and slavery in the Bible, but there's never any mention of a minimum age for sex, because apparently this wasn't a concern for the Bible's authors. Take Exodus chapter 27, verse 7 through 11, which permits a father to sell his daughter as a slave, but doesn't stipulate a minimum age. So he can sell his daughters as slaves or as sex slaves from infanthood. Interestingly, this is where the Bible and the Quran actually differ, as the Quran doesn't sanction selling children as slaves. The notion that it's acceptable to have sex with children, whether in marriage or slavery, was standard during the time of Jesus. For example, the Bible doesn't mention the specific age of Mary, but pre-modern Christians held she was quite young when she was married to Joseph and impregnated by Father God. According to the official Catholic encyclopedia, Joseph was 80 when he married Mary. She was 12 at the same time being Joseph's wife and impregnated.
Wait, wasn't Joseph a carpenter? Was Joseph really 80? How old was Joseph, husband of Mary? I've never heard this before. It could be true. I've just never heard that before. History of Joseph the Carpenter, which is coming. Christ himself tells the story of his stepfather, claiming Joseph was 90 years old when he married Mary and died at 111. Oh, Jesus. Little bro.
Best.
Those are some wild ages. In the Bible, how old was Joseph when he married? It's likely that Mary was between 12 and 14 and Joseph was either 15 to 17 or over 30. That's kind of a wide range. Faith founded on fact. We can deduce that Joseph was most likely around 20 years old. Parts of the church claim that Joseph was 90. Others say he was probably between 16 and 20. Huh. He identified as a 90-year-old.
By Father God. Now, some Christians might question the reliability of the Catholic encyclopedia, but many other sources, including archaeological evidence, prove that the common age for marriage in Judea at the time of Jesus was 13. This is significant because Jesus' views on marriage would reflect those of his era, meaning that he would have endorsed marriage and sex with minors. We cannot find a single recorded statement from Jesus raising even the slightest objection to the child marriage that was happening all around him. Jesus has no shortage of criticism for the Pharisees and larger society, but for some reason, he doesn't condemn anyone for child marriage. In later periods, some Christians adopted flexible guidelines for marriage that they borrowed from Roman law. Roman law was somewhat unique in setting a minimum marriage age for girls at 12. This was more of a guideline rather than a strict law because there were no legal penalties for marrying earlier. Medieval Christians in the West eventually borrowed the same rule, enshrining it in canon law. Christian women could marry at 12, but in some cases, especially among aristocrats, they married as early as 8 or 9. Those are examples from Jewish and Christian history. So why did things change? Two factors, industrialization and feminism. Let's talk about industrialization first. In pre-industrial societies, virtually everyone had to be involved with food production for sheer survival. You couldn't have freeloaders consuming calories but not helping produce calories. This meant that by necessity, all children worked in food production. This is why you don't see any kind of extended schooling for children historically. If kids are in school, they can't work to produce food. But starting in the 18th century, industrialization brought new technologies like tractors and mechanized irrigation. This meant a small part of the population could work as farmers and produce enough food for everyone. This led to the majority of the population moving from food production to manufacturing and service jobs. This caused a major social shift because working on the farm requires no education, but jobs associated with industrialization require more education. To deal with these socioeconomic changes, Western governments gradually introduced mandatory schooling. This went hand in hand with mandatory increases in the age of consent and marriage. This was especially necessary for girls because marriage produces children, and when people have children, they have no time for school. To prevent this, Western governments established minimum ages of consent. In 1791, the French Napoleonic Code established an age of consent of 11. By 2007, the French age of consent was 15. Same thing in Australia, Canada, and Western Europe. In the US, as late as 1880, many states had ages of consent from 10 to 12. In Delaware, it was 7. By 1920, it ranged from 14 to 18. But many may be surprised to hear that today, 25 states don't even have a minimum age of marriage. Between 2000 and 2018, there were 300,000 documented minor marriages in the US, with some brides as young as 10. So industrialization changed attitudes towards child marriage. Feminism did as well. Feminism aims to empower women so that they have careers and status equal to men. This means banning early marriage for girls and encouraging them to stay in school for as long as possible. The fear is that girls may lose out on a career because they got married early and had children. Feminists consider such women victims who have failed in life because they haven't achieved independence and career status equal to men. The feminist thinking was impossible in the pre-industrial era because the overwhelming majority of the populace, both males and females, had nothing resembling a career. Almost everyone did low-skill farm labor with no education. For most of history, there was nothing like career advancement, so it would have made no sense to insist that girls delay marriage to pursue career advancement. We can track the increasing Western hostility towards child marriage over time. One of the first examples is the famous 1748 work, The Spirit of Laws, by French liberal thinker Montesquieu. Montesquieu refers to child marriage as a type of domestic slavery. Montesquieu associates such marriage with hot countries in the South. This includes Muslim countries which had child marriage. So here in the mid-18th century, Montesquieu offers one of the first Western criticisms of child marriage in Muslim countries. Because of this growing liberal hostility, Western countries banned child marriage in the colonies they occupied, like India and North Africa. By the early 19th century, Western Christians magically discovered that their religion actually prohibits child marriage, despite 18 centuries of Christians engaging in it. With this new discovery, Christian missionaries traveled to these colonies and attacked the indigenous religions for allowing child marriage. An important case is British India, with a population that was 75% Hindu and 25% Muslim. Due partly to Christian missionaries, in 1860, the British government set a minimum age of marriage of 10. This was raised to 12 in 1891. This is how liberal stigmas about child marriage were adopted by Christianity in the late 18th century and then globalized by the mid to late 19th century. This brings us to pedophilia. Pedophilia is not an ancient concept. The first documented use of the term is 1906. Pedophilia initially means a psychiatric disorder in which an adult fantasizes about or engages in sexual acts with a prepubescent child. Gradually, pedophilia came to mean any adult who has sexual interest in a person below 18, the age of consent. And of course, the age of consent is artificially set to match mandatory schooling ages. So in essence, the pedophile is someone who has graduated, who is sexually attracted to someone who hasn't graduated from whatever amount of schooling the state has mandated. Now, many will claim that child marriage causes psychological harm. It's interesting that pre-modern people understood trauma and the emotional damage that can come from certain sexual behaviors like sodomy and prostitution, but there's no evidence that anyone in pre-modernity viewed adult-minor relations as traumatic. Even modern research casts doubt on the existence of psychological trauma from adult-minor sexual relations. Psychologists Bruce Rind, Philip Tromovich, and Robert Bosserman have published meta-studies critically analyzing this. What they discovered is that while there can be problems in some cases, there's no inherent harm with adult-minor relationships. The only harm comes from it being socially taboo in current society rather than anything objective or inherent. These psychologists received backlash, as you can imagine, and we can dive deeper into the studies later, but the point is the claim that minor marriage is bad because it objectively causes psychological harm is unproven. So it's bizarre that anyone should depict new modern norms on pedophilia as obvious or eternal invalidity. Such norms were literally inconceivable in the pre-modern period for the many reasons I've mentioned. All this is why attitudes toward child marriage have shifted historically. The burden is on my opponent opponent to give a better explanation for why there was such a radical change in attitude starting about 300 years ago. If child marriage is this objective and universal evil, please explain why 99% of humanity throughout history was blissfully ignorant of this. This is even more of a burden for my opponent to explain because he's a Christian who believes in revelation. Why doesn't the Bible condemn child marriage? The Bible condemns homosexuality, which hasn't been as commonplace historically as child marriage. Was the author of the Bible simply ignorant? Or is it more likely that the author of the Bible is fine with child marriage? That's certainly what countless Christians throughout history believed and practiced. Now I want to take things one step further. Not only do I believe that minor marriage was acceptable in the past, I also believe that it's an institution that society abandons at its own peril. The fact of the matter is, children hit puberty in the 8 to 15 age range. When puberty hits, they biologically experience strong sexual desires, and they'll express this one way or another. Either they'll express it within the safe, stable bonds of marriage, or they'll express it through masturbation, hooking up, sexting, porn use, or worse. Those are the only two options.
Please don't stun my guy.
Any country that denigrates marriage for adults will inevitably encourage sexual liberation and promiscuity for adults. Likewise, any country that denigrates marriage for minors will inevitably encourage sexual liberation and promiscuity for minors or children. The unprecedented degeneracy we see in society today is a direct consequence of preventing marriage for minors. Christians of all people need to wake up and see what's right in front of them. And ultimately, this is why we all need to appreciate Islam and the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In his marriage,
God, it's so cringe when Muslims do that shit. I'm sorry. It's so fucking cringe.
Example of this institution, which is so desperately necessary for all societies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll be going into the rebuttal section next. Mike, I have the timer set for you for 8 minutes. The floor is all yours.
All right, well, I think I did a pretty good predicting what Daniel would say in his opening statement based on what I just heard there. Let's talk about some of the things.
Wait a second before we get into this. Soy break. 1 second, let me grab a drink.
Soy break. Fucking pussy. Soy break. I know. Soy boy.
Oh, wait, they're calling me, the body shop. Hello? Yeah, that's him. Hey. Yeah, how's it going? Yeah.
Mommy don't know
For the front one, right? Okay, cool.
Body shop, doing something unholy.
Yeah, sounds good. Do you know about how long it takes for that stuff to get in? Is this like days, weeks? Okay, cool. All right.
Thanks.
Gotcha.
Say thank you.
Yeah, sure. When do you need that by? Okay, can I do it like tomorrow, or would it be quicker if I do it today, or? Gotcha, cool. Okay. Gotcha, thank you very much. Bye. Oh, well, thank you. She must have been listening to my stream. Oh, yeah. Did you do drugs yesterday? No. Oh, no, but I was up late yesterday. Oh, I streamed late yesterday, so I didn't gym this morning, so stream's off by 9 o'clock tonight. How much did all the damage run you? About like $3,000, I think. There was, my back bumper got bumped before, and I think they have to replace like the whole fucking bumper because that's how it always works. And the front bumper, so on the bottom where it scrapes on the ground, because it tore off like where the screws go in, you just have to replace the whole bumper. So I'm just replacing the front. How did you get damage? So my rear bumper got hit like 2 years ago in a parking lot. Somebody hit it, I guess, when I was away, and then they left a note on my thing. So my back bumper's, but you can barely tell. But the front bumper, when you drive in LA, I didn't know that, like, sometimes when you pull out a parking lot, so you hear that little like out of every parking lot, every gas station, whatever in LA. I just thought that it was just like rubbing some bottom shit. I didn't know. Apparently it like tore off like part of the wheel well, and now it's like fucked. So now I'm just getting the full front and back bumper replaced. Do you not have insurance? Fuck no. And the bank didn't even know. I carried the full term of that loan without any comprehensive insurance. How mad are you, Ally Bank or whoever the fuck insured my, or had the loan on my car? Did the screw get torn out, or is it the part that holds the screws? No, this part that holds the screws got torn out, basically. You can have a car without insurance? Without a, well, I have liability insurance, but no comprehensive. Have you updated your plates? Not yet. Does anyone know how to get a chance to talk to Destiny? Listen, bro, I live in Miami Beach, walk around. Catch me outside, fam.
How about that?
He said. So he said it was perfectly normal before, you know, again, Western Christians came along ruined us. No, Michael Flynn notes in a European demographic system that the average age people would marry between 1500 and 1820 in Europe was 25 to 26. Brent Shaw notes in his paper, The Age of Roman Girls at Marriage, that in Tuscany, girls would marry between 16 and 21 on average, in Florence, 15 to 19. Rudolph Bell notes that in Italian communities in the 19th century, they were marrying within their mid-20s. Peter Laslett says that in England, the average age that women were marrying was 22. Okay, and that was in the 17th century. Piotr Gaswowski says in The Origins of the European Marriage that the average age women were marrying in Poland in the earlier periods was around 20. And again, you can also read Kim Phillips' book, Medieval Maidens, average age women were being married, again, late teens to early 20s. But you brought up Bruce Ryan. I've been waiting months for you to bring up Bruce Ryan. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's talk about Bruce Ryan
trap card
for a little while. Bruce Ryan, for example, that's probably the same paper you referenced in your the debate reviews, Harris Sultan, hebephilia as a mental disorder. He says, for example, on page 7, child sexual abuse researchers have repeatedly maintained that hebephilic interactions are innately and intensely harmful for the younger person, and then he cites his own research to demonstrate that. So he is directly arguing that this is harmful to children. What he's basically saying in his paper is that the active partner, the human, is not suffering from a mental disorder like schizophrenia. It's something that naturally arises in humans. Just like humans naturally steal, murder, and rape. That doesn't mean it's useful or good. He describes it as a harmfully mismatched, neurologically evolved traits on page 6. But what Daniel's not told you about this paper, even though he's been citing it as far back as 2019, is the paper mainly focuses on homosexual hebephilia. He is trying to say that is not a mental disorder. He says it's been pervasive in numerous cultures around the world. He's got a table in his paper that's 4 pages long of how homosexual hebephilia has been practiced around the world in various cultures, including Islamic societies. To quote from page 15, male to immature homosexuality was pervasive in Islamic societies from the 8th to the 19th centuries. Boy attraction was seen just as normal as heterosexual ones. Main interest was in boys early to mid-teens, peaking at about 14. Boys. The appeal vanished with the beard. Adult men were scorned if they were passive partners because manly behavior was to be the active. Staggering amounts of love poetry show an obsession with boyish beauty, seen as comparable to women's as well. Poets attracted to boys constitute a who's who. Desire for boys, but not behavior or lust, was permissible under Islam, but behavior was common nonetheless. Impermissible. The tradition eroded in the late 19th century in reaction to Western abhorrence and efforts to modernize. So, because Daniel's been quoting from Bruce Ryan's paper for years, he's put himself in a trilemma. Either he has not read it.
Trilemma?
He's lying about what it is, or he secretly agrees with a lot of the things Bruce Ryan says and wants to return Islam to the days before Western influence, when big strapping Muslim men could write gay erotic poetry about boys. So I just want to say, but again, Bruce Ryan says this was eroded when Christians came in and basically ended it. So I'm sorry that we in the West came in and we took away your child brides and your gay erotic poetry with our Western values.
Oh God, this guy's definitely got the
So let's also talk about it. He says, do girls complete puberty
Real
by
voice
8 or 9?
issues.
No. According to midwifery and women's health nurse practitioner certification review, the CDC as well, we don't see completion of puberty until 15 or 17, as I noted. I agree, younger sexual activity for people under 8.
Wait, hold on. What does puberty mean? Completion of puberty at 15, 17? I thought that was like very, very, very early 20s. You like finished puberty. When is puberty finished? By 14, most of us 15, 16. Oh, okay. 14 to 16, I guess. I wonder what it means to be like done with puberty. No, that's just your brain. I think your brain is done by in your mid-20s. The Muslim dude said as low as 8. Sure.
18 is bad, and I don't think you should have sex outside of marriage. Okay? But his solution is child marriage. That's like saying, oh my God, I got a kitchen fire. Let's put it out by breaking the dam and flooding the neighborhood. We don't solve a problem with a bigger problem. I cited numerous studies showing how every expert around the world agrees this is harmful to children. This is harmful to their offspring. This should be abolished worldwide. He says we have to talk about channeling desires. Well, you need to remember, as you're developing as a human, your brain is developing, and researchers describe it as being plasticity. As you're developing, your prefrontal cortex is developing, and that's the part of your brain that controls inhibitions. If we have a child who deals with rage, we don't say, well, you got to deal with that right away by just going around beating people up. We tell him to control his inhibitions. When children start developing sexual desires, they need to learn to control them. We should not give them the idea that they should act on them as soon as they got them, because they're never going to learn to control those inhibitions when they become adults later and they see someone who might be tempting them or trying to get them to commit adultery. We got to learn to control these desires. This is why we slowly develop with a plastic brain, plasticity, and we learn to control our inhibitions. They need to be trained as the prefrontal cortex is developing. He cited the Talmud, but the Talmud, for example, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Kiddushin 41a says that it's forbidden for a man to marry off his daughter when she is a minor until she is well grown. Okay, I also cited scholars like Michael Satlow. You can also check out scholars like Amran Troper. They note the average age that Jewish girls were marrying was, again, late
What does Amaranth have to do with this?
early
What?
20s, earliest is mid-teens. He can find no evidence, Michael Satlow, that girls were marrying that young. He talks about the Catholic Encyclopedia saying Mary was impregnated. She was conceived by the Holy Spirit, and that's how Jesus came into human flesh, according to the Catholic tradition. But also, she was a perpetual virgin, according to the same sources. So if we're going to go off what that says about her age, she also never had sex. It's not a comparison. Okay, there's a lot here. He said that before Montesquieu, Western Christians were not condemning minor marriage. No, Soranus of Ephesus talked about the dangers of it. Giles of Rome, Albertus Magnus, again, Kilton Phillips talks about this in her book. This was abhorred by a lot of medical experts. Now, did the common person not realize that? For the most part, a lot of them didn't realize how bad it was. But today, a lot of people today ignore medical experts. So what's the problem? We should go on what the medical experts of the past and the present are saying. And they all seem to point to the idea this is not necessarily the best thing to go for. Moreover, we should most of all be relying on medical experts of today, all of which condemn child marriage. Again, for all the problems I cited, I see no reason to accept this at all, given all the extensive harm it causes. So if the burden is on me, I've given the burden. I have showed how harmful it is, and it should be abolished. People in the past used to use leeches to treat all kinds of diseases. They do not treat.
I don't know, that's the best example. I think you can still use leeches in some cases, because leeches, aren't they a relatively clean way to eat bacteria from certain parts of your body? This is like super pedantic, but this is a super well actually point, but.
Okay, that does not mean we should go back to what ancient people were doing. And we now know this does not work. People used to sacrifice.
Oh, that's maggots. I'm sorry. That's true. Are leeches ever used today in modern medicine? The US FDA in 2004 approved the use of leeches for localized venous congestion after surgery. Or venous, I'm sorry. Recognizing them as living, breathing medical devices, given the scientific name for the leech is Hirudinea. The use for medical purposes is often referred to as hirudotherapy. Oh, so I guess it could still be used. But
humans to the rain gods across the globe and hoping that it would bring the rains. We now know that does not work. Okay, so we do not do those things just because people in the past did it. Okay, as regards to the Bible.
MD here, they can be used, but there's better medicines such as hemochromatosis.
not giving an age. Again, I'll go to Ezekiel 16 really quickly here. For example, it talks about God compares Jerusalem to his wife and says, you know, and you grew up and became tall and arrived at full adornment. Your breasts were formed. Okay, again, according to the midwifery and women's health nurse practitioner, that does not happen until 17 when the breasts have been fully formed in a girl. And scholars like Robert Alter, Mark Rucker, Rolf Alexander all note this is talking about after puberty. So God is sort of setting the standard that sex or lovemaking comes a period even after puberty, because it says that God even passed by her again after the breasts had fully formed. So there's another period of waiting. And again, this is what I can see from scholars like Peter Gentry, Andrew Mine, T.M. Lemma, Stephen Wellham, David Gundel, Ralph Alexander, Robert Alter. All of them are pointing to this. And I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Daniel for 8 minutes as well.
Okay, so Daniel is somebody that I would say is, I don't think he's very intelligent. Here's an issue that Daniel has. Okay, I've noticed this in my debates with him, and I've noticed this in other debates he's had. We'll see if he diverts here. He cannot respond to another person's arguments. So he's probably going to restate some of the same points that he said before. He's going to run down some dialogue trees he's done before, but he will not incorporate any of this guy's argumentation into what he's about to say. One thing that's really surprising to me, I was going to say, he actually came from Harvard as well, didn't he? Am I wrong on that, or was it just his wife was from Harvard? He did? Yeah. I don't understand. That's a little wild to me. But unless maybe just the religion has rotted his mind. But we'll see if he actually is able to incorporate any of what this guy said into his response. We'll see.
So Mike here is misunderstanding the argument. He's citing some average ages from different